Hey, everybody. Welcome to our next virtual guest speaker series for MKT353 Sports Marketing. I'm excited to have our next guest here, a sports industry veteran. Dare I say we worked together 20 years ago. Ingrid Petri is the Vice President of Portfolio Sales at AEG, and I'm excited to have her speak to you guys today. So welcome, Ingrid.
Thank you, and nice to meet your class. JP, if you give me some background again on what everybody's studying and
yeah, this is our, so for this particular class is our sports marketing class. So this is one of their their second course in sports management, and these are mostly, I believe, sophomores and juniors. So just starting out and getting involved in sports, and excited to meet and hear people and hear a little bit about what you've done and kind of your path into sports.
Amazing. Well, as JP said, we worked together at the Eagles over 20 years ago. Both got our start in ticket sales, believe it or not, when the Eagles were moving from the Vet to Lincoln Financial. So it definitely was an experience, and really started my career working in sports. I now work for AEG, which stands for Anschutz Entertainment Group, which is based out of Los Angeles. And we are one of the world's largest sports and entertainment companies with a diversified portfolio across sports teams, venues, festivals, ticketing platform. And really what stands, or what's within that, are the LA Kings as an example, LA Live, where Crypto.com Arena is, where the Lakers, Clippers, and Kings play, along with multiple other entertainment events. We also have Coachella, Stagecoach, and Jazz Fest within our portfolio, among, I believe, 27 other festivals. We have over 50 music venues across the country. And then sitting outside of the US, we have the O2 in London, Mercedes-Benz in Berlin. We also have the world's second largest ticketing platform with Access, which tickets all of our venues, sports teams, as well as other entertainment properties. And then also we have a share in ASM, which is a global management firm for facilities. So we operate over 200 plus venues on a global scale. And then we're also under development outside of the US in countries such as Japan, building entertainment venues. So again, a very diversified portfolio, which is exciting because we are producing content with our teams and our entertainment portfolio. Then we have the venues where the events are taking place. And then we're also ticketing these. So we have the full end-to-end consumer experience, as well as the ability to capture that content and create production opportunities for the brands we're working with. And the role that I sit in is sponsorship. So thinking about ways that we can connect brands in an authentic way to our portfoldio. And we can really think about how we customize that opportunity for each of the brands we're working at based on their goals and objectives. What audience are they trying to target? What is that brand message they want to communicate? So maybe in one instance, it makes sense for the Kings partnership, or maybe we want to lean more into Coachella and art and music and embracing culture. And then also a big piece of what we do is how can AEG help make the world a better place? I think we're all here today because sports has such an impact on our daily lives, whether you know it or not. Sports and entertainment, music brings people together. It's a common language. It's how we can feel emotion. It gives us some days a reason to wake up on a Sunday, even though the Eagles didn't quite win the Super Bowl, but they have in the past. But then it also gives us a way to have a positive impact in terms of ESG. So environmental, social, and governance responsibility. So from an environmental standpoint, we're looking hard at how can we make our festivals, our venues as sustainable as possible? Are we using compostable products? How can we have as little of a footprint as possible? And then from a social standpoint, really supporting diversity, equity, and inclusion. How are we making safe spaces for the LGBT community across our venues and events? The LA Kings had a partnership with Cal Hope, where they had the Cal Hope logo on Kings helmets. And that was just to raise awareness for mental health. And it was in the beginning of the pandemic, and very much we wanted to support Cal Hope to destigmatize talking about mental health. And I think one of the biggest ways to do that is to have athletes talk about mental health and the stress of just daily lives that even they are up against, mental health and issues such as that. And then I also would say from a environmental standpoint, we just announced that we're expanding our relationship with our Cup, which is a company that has reusable cups that we started with in Colorado, and now we're launching that into our venues within Los Angeles. And so we're always constantly looking at ways that we can support environmental, but DE&I, and then just overall, again, making the world a better place. So that's just a high level where I am at AEG and what we're doing. And then as far as my career background, a lot of the opportunity that I've been provided has come from people I've worked with in the past, which is fantastic. Wherever I've worked, probably my next opportunity has come from somebody that I'd worked with in the past. I left the Eagles and I worked at the NFL for a while, working on the sponsorship team. I left, went to Sports Illustrated because of one of my good friends that I had met at the Eagles, and worked in Sports Illustrated, really selling and creating authentic programming with the Sports Illustrated logo and brand, similar to what I was doing at the NFL, which was an exciting opportunity. I also worked at the NBA for a very long time, and that's an incredible league to work for, especially I think going into the pandemic and restarting our season in the bubble and supporting Black Lives Matter, and really, again, working for a company that created positive change in the world. And I've seen the NFL doing quite a bit of that today now as well. So it makes me proud of the places that I've worked. So I think that's just, again, high level overview. I would say that lessons that I've learned along the way, first and foremost, I think it's being collaborative wherever you work, always raising your hand, always being up for any challenge, but then also asking questions. Never be afraid to ask a question, because I guarantee you that the person next to you in the room has the same question. They're just afraid to raise their hand. So if raising hand is twofold: one, raising your hand for opportunity, but two, raising your hand when you would like to know more clarification, or potentially you have a question, just want to know more information. So I guess those are my high level words of advice. Then I also would just say, never burn a bridge, and just keep in touch with people you work with, because you can always continue to learn from them, keep friendships alive. And there was an article in the New York Times probably a year ago that talked about the relationships that you make early on in your career when you're in the office, and that those relationships, from whether it's going to get coffee with somebody or going for after work drinks or going to lunch or just even chit-chatting in the office, those initial relationships you make in your career will stick with you the rest of your career, the rest of your life. They're the people that root for you, the people that you can turn to for advice. And I would say that a lot of us, I think, going into the career world or your first job, you might think you want to work from home, but I promise you, if you can get into an office, that's one of the best experiences I've had in my life.
Yeah, Ingrid, I would agree with you. I mean, it's just amazing. I would just seeing all the people that we started our career with and go into other areas of sport, and then everybody's. I was like, this past weekend, obviously I didn't go to Arizona this year, but just seeing all of the like former colleagues that were there for a variety of different reasons. And some were there for working, some were there for just being a fan of the team. And did you end up going to Arizona?
Yes, I was there.
So what were you doing there? What was your experience like? Tell us a little bit about, because we've talked about Super Bowl as kind of one of those hallmark events that, especially as it relates to sports marketing, one of the premier events each year, probably, was the most watched. I think the ratings came back. It was the third most watched television program of all time this past Sunday. So tell us a little bit about your Super Bowl experience.
I mean, Super Bowl it's not just Sunday. It's the whole week leading up to the Super Bowl. And as we've seen with the halftime ratings, I think Rihanna has the second most viewed after Katy Perry, that it's very much of a cultural music sports experience. And a lot of what the lead up to Super Bowl is, yes, of course, it's the parties, but I also think it's very much, how are they giving back to local Phoenix, Scottsdale, Arizona? What messages are they providing to youth globally around health and wellness? A lot of the Super Bowl too are meetings with brands. I think it's kind of the epicenter annually where people can come together from a business perspective. You can meet with 10 brands in one day, and I don't think that there is anything else like that out there in the world. And I would also just say that the way in which the NFL executes that entire week is just it's top notch. They've really done a fantastic job. And I see that similar, not just to the Super Bowl, but what happens around the draft and how it's moving to a new location each year and really supporting the local economy of the cities that they go into, similar to kickoff as well. So it's certainly become a behemoth, and I can't say it's all work. It's also quite a bit of fun. And to your point, JP, it's a nice reunion. It's good to see people that I've known for 20 plus years as well. So it's a time of joy, I would say.
Except, of course, the outcome, but that's a whole other story.
Yes. Thankfully, again, the Eagles had one in Minnesota not too long ago.
Yeah. So, all right, well, I'll tell you what, let's, because, again, we want to keep, and we appreciate your time here. So why don't we kind of open it up to some questions and kind of just get some, an interactive sort of discussion here on anything you have. Any questions you have for Ingrid or questions about anything working in sports, and we'll go from there. Who we got? Who's going to be the brave volunteer, the first?
JP, you need to seed questions in this, so you don't have silence. There also doesn't have to be any questions.
Come on, guys.
I'll ask a question.
All right, Colin. Good job.
So I guess, is there, obviously you probably enjoy what you do, but is there, given the opportunity, is there anything else you'd want to do right now?
It's a good question. And I do feel that I'm doing that now. So walking through my career, I've always worked in sports, but there was a large part of me that also wanted to work in music. When I was in high school and college, I would say, I'm going to work for a music company. And now I feel that I have that opportunity given our portfolio. It's fantastic that I get to work across the top music festivals in the world and the most iconic of venues. But then also we have a music series that we just announced called Reset, where we'll be in 12 cities throughout June, bringing 12 artists across those cities over the course of a weekend. And it's been exciting for me to work on that directly with our global touring team. And we have from LCD Sound System to Jamie XX, Steve Lacy, Boy Genius. So a very diverse portfolio of artists that we're working with. So I do feel like I've checked the box of, not necessarily checked the box because that's not necessarily something you want to do, but that life experience and learning, I feel that I'm having that right now, which is amazing.
Thank you.
So Ingrid, I know you work in, but pretty much you're in sales, right? So what do you like about sales? What are the biggest challenges with sales? Because I think a lot of times students have a little bit of hesitancy when they say, oh my God, and sales is the entry into sports. And I don't think they really maybe quite understand exactly to what levels you're working now and involved in that process.
Yeah, I love sales because I'm always thinking about new brands we can partner with and coming up with new and innovative ideas to enable brands to connect with our fans on a global scale. No day is the same for me. And for me, my output is only as strong as how much I'm thinking of things and picking up the phone and talking to people or sending emails. And there's nothing better than seeing a deal come to fruition and knowing that you've ideated on it, you spoke to the brand, you brainstormed together, you collaborated, and then you've brought something to life. I think that's such an exciting experience. And that could be something as big as a brand partnership where it's, let's say, I can't even give it necessarily an example, but just wherever you see brands come up in authentic ways, there was a lot of effort that went into forming that relationship. But then also I would say if you started in ticket sales where JP and I started, you form that relationship with that ticket buyer. You talk to them about the passion that they have for the team and to be live and rooting for that team directly. I think experience sports on TV is obviously incredible, or whether it's on your phone or you're engaging with content through social media, but that in arena and stadium sports experience is unparalleled. So just even starting in ticket sales, I think is a great way to learn the business, to think about who you're approaching. What does that outreach look like? What is your response rate? It's a numbers game. I also love math, and sales is very much a part of that when you're putting together a P&L of, okay, this is the partnership we want to do, but does it financially make sense for both parties, from the company that you're working for, how much revenue are you making, but also from an investment standpoint for the particular brand, you have to make it worth their while.
Okay. So another question I have for you, and I think you hit on a really important point early, is just the importance of building relationships. And a lot of those relationships, as you mentioned, that I had, and certainly you've had now, came from working in for a team. But I guess the question becomes, what could a student do now to start building their network, building those relationships with people that are working in sports? Like, what are some, and you see it now from the other side. So what's something that a student could be doing to kind of put themselves in the right position?
Yeah. And I think a lot of the main part of establishing relationships in your career is, one, being a nice, good person, but also delivering on what you say you're going to deliver on, and working collaboratively, especially if you're in sales, with the other person that's sitting across the table from you, like finding a solution that works for both parties, and making sure that you are always doing right by your company, by your colleagues, by your brand partners. But that's not an easy task. It's something that requires quite a bit of effort. And I would say for all of you where you're sitting, it's find brands you're interested in. Look for potentially on LinkedIn, individuals that work for those companies. You can do outreach to them. A lot of people I know do respond to LinkedIn requests to connect. Perhaps if you do get them on the phone, I would send a handwritten thank you note. Very few people do that those days. If you don't have their address, you can look up maybe the company and then send a card in the mail. Also, if you can't find that, then maybe just send them a LinkedIn thank you note, or an email. Then I would maybe check in with that particular person that you spoke to. Maybe every year you could send them a Happy New Year note and thought of you. Or if you saw an article about the particular company or the person, you could say, I saw this article, I thought of you. So just keeping in touch with those people that you meet along the way, I think is important. And I would also say that if somebody helps make an introduction for you, say thank you to that person, because sometimes that doesn't happen. And I would say it's a quick way to not continue that relationship that you put in place.
Yeah, no, I think getting involved is probably the most important thing, right? Just getting involved and just meeting people.
Yeah.
I didn't
I
tell
started as an intern at the Eagles, and upon graduating from college, I still didn't have a full-time job, and I kept on just knocking on doors and being persistent. And a month later, I did have a full-time job. So it's also persistence, not giving up. A lot of times in sports, you might get knocked down like a football player on the field, but you just need to learn how to stand right back up and keep on pushing along.
Yeah. What was your first internship was when you were an undergrad or after undergrad?
Undergrad, I was a senior at Villanova, and it was on the Eagles Youth Partnership Team, which is the nonprofit arm of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah. Yeah. And similar with me, I started working Eagles game days as a sophomore. And my first job was taking tickets and working elevators at the vet.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what led me then to this crazy career. And now here I am, doing other things, but enjoying it. So, all right. So we have a little bit about 5-6 minutes left. What other questions you guys have? I want to hear from some of you guys.
Last one.
Okay, go for it, Andrew.
So I would probably say, like, was there a moment over like these last few years where you were looking through ticket sales, maybe through the Eagles or just like the NBA league, where there was like a moment that happened and you were like, yeah, this is like why you love doing what you do?
I would say it happens all the time, and I don't want to make it sound like, oh, every day is roses, because it's not. But I'm always really proud of the partnerships that I put in place. I would say probably the one point where things were looking very dark was the beginning of the pandemic, and the NBA season shut down. And I just thought, oh my God, I thought sports was resilient, that nothing would ever stop sports and entertainment, that no matter what, consumers would have a demand for it. But here everybody was stuck at home and we weren't having games. But then Adam Silver said, we're going to restart our season. We're going to do it in a bubble down in Orlando, Florida. And we started talking to brands about, how can you help us make this happen? Like, what are the resources that we need? So we were out talking to workout equipment companies to help us create gyms. And one of the companies we started talking about, and this was right around George Floyd too, was Clorox. About, okay, first and foremost, we need disinfecting products. We need people to feel safe within the bubble. We need to make sure it's a sterilized environment from one perspective, but then also, how can we do something together that brings people together? Would you think this Clorox disinfecting company is bringing people together? Like, that's not a natural connection. But we created authentic programming for youth and schools to just talk about the COVID-19 pandemic and the what people were facing at that particular time. And it was just an amazing partnership, just from a collaboration standpoint. I think that gave me hope at that particular time that things would be okay, right? That we would figure out solutions to get past the current predicament that the world was in.
Yeah. So Ingrid, we're going to, in this class, we're going to be eventually, I think in the next week or so, really start diving into the idea of sponsorships. I guess the one question I have for you is, talk a little bit about the importance of activation.
Yeah, and I think it's even more important now, obviously, coming out of the pandemic, or people wanting to experience in real life events, to have that one-on-one exchange with a brand, to build that emotional connection. It could be you're at an event and you need a quiet space just to relax, that you have stimulation overload. Is there a brand that's working in the mental health space that could create that sort of environment at one of our festivals? Examples like that, I think, are unique ways for brands to work with us.
Okay. Brian, looks like you got a question, bud.
Yeah. So just want to know, while you were doing your undergrad and while you were choosing a career to pursue, what characteristics or qualities made you think that you would fit in sports marketing, this business?
Sorry, I didn't understand your question exactly. Did you say, you can just
like while pursuing your career, what qualities like you had that made you like think that you would fit in this career?
Got it. I would say, first and foremost, a passion for it. It made me excited, right? It was drive. I had interest in it. I was constantly reading books about sports marketing and how it was changing. When I was graduating from Villanova, at that time, sponsorship was putting your name on a stadium. You're a brand and you're going to have naming rights to that stadium. And I thought it was brilliant because it had never been done before. And just thinking and knowing how much sponsorships evolved over the last 20 years is incredible. Content's being created with brands. You have experiential on site. You have brand relationships with athletes, with musicians. It just is evolved and become far more 360 than it was back then. But again, I was extremely interested in it. Creativity is also a part of my personality and drive. And then also, I just love meeting new people. I love learning about brands, what their goals and objectives are, what's their go-to-market strategy. Those are things that I'm extremely interested in. So that helps me in my job.
All right. Thank you so much.
Yes. And a career is a ladder. To say your first job out of school doesn't mean that that's going to be your career trajectory. So you can take 2 steps up on a ladder, but then you might take 2 steps down and move on to a different one. So your career can change. What your interests are might change over the years. And I think for any role you're in, it's making sure that you're learning, that you're interested in what you're doing. And if it's not, maybe talk to your boss about new challenges you can take on and try to find a solution perhaps internally in your organization. And if you can't find that, then perhaps it is time to start thinking about what are other companies' lines of work that you might be interested in.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, so we got a couple more minutes. Anybody else have a question for Ingrid? Okay, well, Ingrid, I'll ask you, and maybe this is going to be our final question. Just, what advice would you have for students looking to break into sports? What's kind of best advice you have now, looking at sort of your career and looking at, now from the other side of the fence, so to speak?
I would probably suggest what JP, you and I did, but we got an internship. We reached out to the organization, and it could be working for the nonprofit arm of the team or the league, or it could be collecting tickets. And then once you get your foot there, trying to network as much as you possibly can across the organization, to have conversations, get coffee with individuals, to learn about what their particular roles are, and then see what opportunities might arise. I also would, again, I reach out to companies, teams, leagues that you're interested in, to see if somebody will talk to you. I remember when I was in college, I mean, at the time email existed, but it wasn't the road that you would go. I sent a bunch of letters to companies that I was interested in, asking if they'd talk to me. And so I found executives on their websites, and then I would send those executives letters, and believe it or not, quite a bit of people got back to me, and I established connections that way.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think you just gotta get out there, get involved, put yourself out there, meet as many people as you can, and get as many experiences as you can to kind of see what you can make out of it. So, okay, well, Ingrid, I appreciate it. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's good catching up with you. And
Yeah, good to see you.
And if hopefully if anybody has any direct questions, I'm more than happy to, if you're okay, just either directing them to maybe connect with you on LinkedIn or maybe sharing some contact information if you're okay with
Definitely. Yeah, feel free to send me a note on LinkedIn, and I will promise I'll get back to you.
that. Yeah, okay, awesome. Well, thanks again. Good seeing you.
All right.
I'll talk to you soon. Bye.